So welcome back to another episode of Behind the Touchline. I'm George, once again, the host. Here, have with me is the assistant coach with OKC Energy, Leigh. Leigh, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm doing good. How are you?
Everything's good on my end. So I actually just finished watching the Man United versus PSG game, and let me tell you, it wasn't pleasant on my end. We were 1-1 in the game. PSG turned it around 2-1 late in the second half, and then we got a red card shortly after that, and then Neymar finished it off in the 90th minute with another goal to make it 3-1. So not happy on my end over here.
You can still make it through though, right?
Yeah. So I think we're still first in the table right now, I believe. I think everyone has 9 points, but the goal difference is what's separating everyone, obviously. So Man United's on top. Then you have PSG. Then you have Leipzig. But we have Leipzig in our last game of the Champions League, so we cannot afford a loss.
Big game.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. So yeah, Leigh, you told me you're out in Colorado. What's that experience like? How's it been, with the pandemic and things like that? I know it's kind of different across all states,
Yeah, I've only been here since close to the end of the season. Obviously, I lived in Oklahoma for the season. My wife stayed in Colorado and didn't move out to Oklahoma. So it was important after the season finished, obviously because of quarantine and the restrictions that we have in terms of traveling, who we can see and who we can cross paths with. I didn't get to see him much this year, so it was important for me to come back in the off season and spend some time with my wife. And I'm just lucky enough I get to do it in Colorado.
No, of course. So you haven't lived in Colorado at all before, or is this the first time you're there? What's that situation?
Yeah, I moved here in 2016 from Nebraska. So I was in Nebraska for I've moved around a little bit, but I was probably in Nebraska, Omaha for 7 years. I'd say that was probably my home in America.
Gotcha.
And then I moved to Colorado in 2016.
Nice. Yeah. So I've actually never traveled anywhere out there. So the most west I've been was actually far west, which is out in California, but I've never been up like the north, northwest or anything like that. So I definitely want to go out there someday. I know there's a lot of mountains and great views. I'm sure you can attest for that,
For sure.
So yeah, Leigh, so just tell me about, your upcoming into soccer. I know that you were involved you're from Liverpool, right? You were involved in the academies out there.
Yep, from Liverpool. I moved to the US when I was 20. So I've been here for about 12 years now.
And what was that transition like, moving from out there and coming over here? That you said 12 years ago, so that was what, 2008?
Yeah, 2008 was my first year in the USA. The transition wasn't easy. It's not easy. Kind of my background was I'm from Liverpool. I'd been there my entire life, and it was really the only way of life that I knew. I'd travel to Spain on holiday or go to Turkey and travel around Europe a little bit. So you get to experience different cultures, but you're only there for a week or two, so you don't really need to adapt to a different culture. And initially when I was moving to the US, I thought it's an English-speaking country. I see what the US is like on TV, like how different can it be? But I got a real big shock when I moved here, and it was a real difficult adjustment. But I was lucky enough to be around great people at the time, and I was in a real good environment in college that helped me, kind of adjust to the culture in the US. So it was crazy, but now I'm probably more American than I am for English.
That's crazy you say that, because it's funny. My parents are immigrants too. They come from Honduras, and I feel like my parents can kind of feel the same way. More so my dad, he feels more American now than Honduran. So that's pretty funny that you mentioned that. Did you feel sort of homesick, when you first came over here?
I don't think you'll ever not miss home. It's always in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
Especially for me, coming from Liverpool, and people from Liverpool are very proud of where they're from. And that's probably most places, right? I mean, you're probably proud of your city and where you're from and etc. So you never really lose that ever. But I was at a stage in my life where I was living at home alone with my mother and my two sisters. And I was 20. I wanted to pursue, the dream of becoming a pro. It never worked out at home, and I wanted my own independence. So I got an opportunity to come to the USA, and I took a massive step and a gamble in doing that. And thankfully I'm still here, and it's going okay for me right now. But you miss home all the time. But I wanted my independence. I wanted to get away and kind of get out of Liverpool and just carve a different path for myself. So that was my intention when I came here.
I hear you on that. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, right? It's always scary moving out at first, but sometimes you gotta do, take that next step in your life and your career and whatever that path might take you. And so tell me more about that. So you come to the US, and what do you decide to do here? You said you had an opportunity over here. Did you play in college at all? Was it that?
Yeah, so I'll rewind a little bit. So I played at home. I also went to a local college at home. So in England, high school finishes at 16, and then you go to what you would probably consider a junior college, and then you go to university. So I was at what you would consider a junior college here in England. And one of my instructors, his brother was a coach over in the USA. And I played for the college, and they approached him about me potentially going to the US and looking for a scholarship. So I was like, let's go for it. It hasn't worked out here for me, so let's try go to the USA and see if I can make the dream happen there. So we got connected. I ended up coming to the USA on a trial in 2006, I think it was. But also prior to that, and also the same year, I'd been over with a team from Liverpool and played in the Dallas Cup. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Dallas Cup, but it's a massive international tournament in the US, in Dallas. And a team from Liverpool selects 18 players to go over there. So between that and my college, I had some opportunities to come to the USA. I was initially recruited by Creighton, but that didn't work out for eligibility reasons. So they basically placed me in a local school in Iowa called Iowa Western Community College. So they said, go there, we'll keep an eye on you, you're close. We'll watch your grades, make sure you're a good student, and then we'll see what happens. So I was in Iowa Western for a couple of years, and I then tried to transfer. It didn't work out for me to go to an NCAA school. I was ineligible, not because of grades. From what I can remember, it was something or classes or a course that I took back home. So it just didn't work out for me to go to a Division I level. So then I played NAIA for University of Texas at Brownsville. And then I transferred to Bellevue University, which was back to Omaha, or the Omaha area.
Right.
And yeah, in between all of that, I played PDL. I played PDL for years. I played up in Toronto for Toronto Lynx, and I played for Des Moines Menace. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the playing career that I had. Never made it to the next level, but that was my career in the US from a soccer perspective.
Right, and so that would be what? That would be what is considered now USL 2, I guess. That's the level you were playing at?
Yep, USL 2.
Right, and so talk to me about that, because I guess from when you were playing to now, it's completely changed, right? Soccer is massively involved here in the US. You see more, top US players going out there in Europe. You have Gio Reyna, Pulisic, Kenzie, etc. The list goes on and on. Tell me more about that and the evolution.
You've gone quiet.
Hit the mute button. Sorry about that. Always happens to me. So yes, let me just rephrase my question. Basically, I was asking you, how do you think the USL 2 has evolved, or the USL in general, from when you were playing versus now?
It's very different for sure, and it's different for the better. I think the evolution of football in itself in the US, forget USL, from college, from youth, from every single part of the US pyramid, I think is improved tremendously. Not that when I came in 2008, it was bad by any means. In fact, I came over with the mentality that, football is not the first sport in America. The level's not going to be great. That was my mentality when I come over in 2008. And I was wrong. I was completely wrong. Because when I came over, the level was good. It was good. The level was good in college. The level was good in PDL when I played there. So I instantly got proven wrong, which was good for me, because it really made me realize that I'm not going to walk into any team. I'm not going to come over here and be the guy. I've got to earn it. I've got to fight for it. I've got to work for it. So yeah, I think from 2008 to today, the game is developed tremendously, and I think it's only going to keep going that way.
No, I agree with you there. And what do you think about particular, comparing the college game versus, the USL? Because I always have players come up to me and saying, oh, well, I'm thinking about leaving college. Like, I really want to go pro, this and that, or try to make it. And obviously everyone wants to make it, right? That's involved, that's their dream. But what advice would you have for those young players? You're like, because I know obviously, you decided to leave your home and come to the States to try it out here, but you obviously went to college too. So what kind of advice do you have for those young kids that are undecided in what route to take?
Get your degree.
Right.
Get your degree first. And I'll share a little bit of a sensitive story here, and it's a personal story that I've got no problem sharing. So in 2008, when I came to the USA with that mentality of, I'm coming here to play football, and I'm gonna be fine, because the level wasn't great in my mind. But like I said, I was wrong. So in 2008, I came to the USA, I went to school, and I just couldn't connect the fact that I had to do well in class for me to play. I couldn't understand that concept of my grades mattered that much to where they needed to be good. My GPA needed to be good. My grades needed to be good in order for me to play. And I just couldn't connect that. It just wouldn't register with me. So I was a really poor student in my first semester in the USA, very first semester in the fall. And I had a good season. I had a pretty good season at Iowa Western, and I failed every single class. Next thing, I lose my scholarship, and I'm on the next plane back to England. And within 6 months, my US dream of making it to the next level was over. And next thing that happened to me, I was back in England, and in 2008 it was the recession. So I was back home, and I couldn't even get a job. I couldn't get a part-time job. I couldn't do anything. So I thought I'd lost everything just because I was really immature, and I just didn't put education first. I put football first. So that was a massive lesson for me, and thankfully I had some people who believed in me and helped me put those wrongs right. And when I came back the year after, I thankfully passed every class with the best grades I could, and got my GPA as high as I could. And from then on out, I was a really good student. I always put being a student first. And now, fast forward a few years, I'm fortunate enough that now I've got an associate, a bachelor's, and a master's, all because of football. Because of that experience put me on the right track to say, I need to put education first. Even if I do make it to the next level, I need to put it first. Even if I don't, I need to put it first. So I'm very fortunate that I've had the educational pathway I've had because of football. Now I'm at the professional level. I'm starting to see players who are now at the back end of their careers and stepping away from football, and now asking questions. What do I do? And that's a hard question to ask. What do I do now? Especially if you don't have a degree, because you don't have anything to fall back on. So regardless, I will always say, put your education first, because football, it can be over in 5 minutes. You never know. And you need something to really fall back on, because by the time you get through your career, you may have a kid, you may have a wife, you may have more than one kid, you may have a mortgage, a car payment. What are you going to do then if you have no education? It's tough. So I highly recommend getting your education first.
That is honestly the best advice I've heard in a long time right there, Leigh. You hit it right on the head, because I completely agree with you. There has to be a point where a player realizes, of course, you have to be ambitious, but there has to be a point where you have to think about that future. What happens when my career ends? It could end, like you said, in 5 minutes. Nothing is ever, set in stone for you. You think your career is going great at one point, the next it's gone. That's just the reality of life. And you have to really be able to adapt and think and be mature. Like you said, you learned through all those experiences. You were fortunate enough. Maybe other people won't be as fortunate enough, right? To be able to come back and redeem themselves. So it's very important. Again, like I always tell people, don't leave school, really think about it, really think about what you're doing, because you're in here in the first place because of your soccer and you get to have a free education, I think you should take big advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that lesson within 5 months of me being in the USA, and I look back to what I was thinking then, and I wasn't. It didn't really affect me that much. And then when I moved back to home, and then I was like, it hit me really hard. But I'm lucky I had that experience so early on in my career, so to speak, whether it was a player or as a coach. But I'm lucky to have had that experience. Some people have not had that experience and may not have that experience to really put that right. So, you know, if I can give you some advice, it's don't do what I did and just get your education.
For sure, for sure. And then just going like backtracking a little. So you grew up in Liverpool. I think I read somewhere you played in the Liverpool and Everton academies, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Was that at a young age? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't with Liverpool very long, nor with Everton very long, but it was amazing. I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan. It's in my blood. I'm fortunate for you. I'm a massive Liverpool fan, and you're my biggest rival. But it was, you know, just being able to be in and around the academy, being around, you know, some of the big timers who were rolling around the academy, brushing shoulders with some of the pros who come in and run a session or come and watch a training session. It was just a different world, but it was short lived, never worked out for me. But those experiences live with you forever.
Yeah. And so what do you think about Liverpool's season so far?
It's been very up and down, but I'm amazed at the fact that, you know, the resilience that we've had and the young kids coming up who have stepped in to fill some big shoes and losing some of the big players we've got missing right now. And, you know, we're still up at the top of the table in both the Champions League and the Premier League. So I'm surprised a little bit, but I'm not too surprised because Klopp's been phenomenal. He's been phenomenal. I think it's the situation we're in right now and where we find ourselves both in the league and the Champions League, that's just testament to Klopp and what he's set in the locker room and in the squad as a whole. The mentality he's set there is just phenomenal. So we still got a long way to go though.
And so, like, going back off that point, what I'm trying to say is, what do you think is the role that a manager plays in, right? Because I know, for example, like in the pros and other sports, like for example, MLB, like in baseball, I'm not sure if you follow it, managers don't really seem that important in that sport. Or like even basketball, like they say it's all, you know, players run the league, it's really them who determine things. So what kind of role do you think a manager plays in soccer in particular? How important do you think a manager really is to set that culture? And, you know, obviously as far as, you know, the training sessions, the formations, et cetera, tactics, all that.
It's absolutely imperative. I mean, he is the guy, like you just said, he sets the culture. And I don't think if you have a good locker room with good people who are all pulling in the right direction, that if you don't have that, I don't think the tactics, I don't think anything else matters. You know, the results, in my opinion, they just don't come. So the manager sets the tone for all of that. And if you get that right, then I'm being biased, of course, with Klopp, but if you get that right, you can see how that culture, you can see how that common goal and that direction of the entire squad is huge. Because you look at Liverpool's squad and they've got some big time players. And you think, okay, they should be doing really good. They should be. But now they're not there. Now look at the squad today and who's in there. We've got a lot of young kids, a lot of inexperienced kids at the Premier League level, the Champions League level. And look at the results we've been getting lately with those players in there. So I think that in itself speaks massive volumes of the culture and the importance of the culture and the common goal and direction of the players, which is set by the manager. So I think I couldn't think of a better example, even though I'm being biased.
Of course, I'm definitely a big fan of Klopp too. Even from his time with Dortmund, it was already, you know, certain that he was going to be one of the great managers in the years to come, and he's not proving that with Liverpool. Now going back to like your career. So fast forward now. So you played soccer, you know, you did that, you got your degree. So what led you to become a scout, and just sort of walk me through that?
A coach.
What was that?
What led me to be a scout or a coach?
So you were first as a coach, right? And then now you're an assistant. Well, you were, well, I meant coach. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. So I've always coached. It's always been something that I've done. So when I was in kind of the equivalent to junior college in England, the course I took was actually in coaching, and I had a coaching element. So back then I was 17, 18. So I was coaching then. And then when I moved to the USA, you know, it's a common thing that you do is you come to the US and you find your way as an international, you know, coaching in some way, shape or form. So when I came to the USA, I was coaching immediately, and it's something I've just always done. It's just always been a passion of mine, just because football is a passion of mine. And then as I started to realize a little bit later in my playing career that, you know, it's probably not going to work out for me as going to the next level. Roughly around the same time, I was starting to progress a little bit more in the soccer hierarchy, so to speak. In terms of the pyramid of the football pyramid in the USA, you know, going from you know, coaching kids who were just coming into the game, the, you know, foundational phase, if you want to put something on it. I'm working my way up through girls and boys and middle school and high school and ODP, into college and PDL, and then making a step to the pro level. So it's something I've always done. It's something I've always been fascinated with, because as a player, I was always a real student of the game. I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to be better. I always analyzed myself, the opposition, the players I'm playing with, the players I'm playing against. I was always intrigued by the educational side of it, the tactical side. I always paid close attention to all my managers and how they dealt with situations. So it was just always something I was really intrigued by. And also from an my early years in the US, I instantly started to take my coaching badges. And that's something I kept up with through the years of coaching and playing too. So it's something that's kind of been a natural progression. It's not something I've forced in terms of me trying to really get to the next level. It's just something that's been natural. I've not pushed it. I've just really focused on education, being better, being a better me, and being able to help the players around me. And if I can do that well, I felt like, you know, if I did that really well and focus on those things, whatever comes next comes next. If it's a step to the next level, great. If it's not, you just keep plugging away and keep trying to be better. So that's kind of the background for me from a coaching perspective.
Right. And so now fast forward to 2020, you're now an assistant coach, right, with OKC. What sort of led you to, you know, take that role, and tell me how that experience has been so far? I know that pandemic certainly, with the pandemic, rather, hasn't been, you know, easy year, but just tell me about that.
Yeah. So I'll actually fast forward to last year, because last year was my first year in the pros. Part of my education is in exercise science, and I also have an interest in the, you know, just the scientific side of football too. So this, you know, strength and conditioning, fitness coach, you know, whatever phrase you want to put on it. So last year, Fresno FC, who are no longer in the USL Championship, but they were in the championship last year, they were looking for a strength and conditioning coach. So I was connected with the club, and essentially I was hired to be the strength and conditioning coach. But obviously I had a strong background. I wouldn't say a strong background. I had a strong connection to coaching and football, being a football coach. So I kind of had the dual role there, to where I was the assistant coach, but also the fitness coach at Fresno FC last year. So that was my foot in the door in the pros. But I knew deep down that I didn't want to be associated as being, you know, the fitness coach. I wanted to be an assistant coach who has knowledge in that side of the game. So last year we had a really good year in Fresno. We had a pretty good season, and then of course Fresno FC ceased operations, so I was looking for a new job. So the head coach of OKC, John Pasquarella, if you don't know John, he's got an extensive background in the MLS. He was with Sporting Kansas City for a while as a goalkeeper coach and assistant coach. Won the MLS Cup, won US Open Cups, and he was also more recently with Minnesota United. He became the head coach in Des Moines Menace in 2017, and he wanted to bring me in. And that was the first time I really met John. So we connected back then, and we continued to keep a good relationship. I never ended up going to play for him, and still to this day, he gives me crap about it. But I never ended up going to play for him because I moved here to Colorado for a job. So we kept in touch, and after Des Moines, he moved to Minnesota United, so he was there. And I was trying to continue my education and just to really understand what it took to be at the next level. So Minnesota were down in Florida, and they were doing preseason there. So I said to John, hey, can I come down on my own dime? I'll come down. I just want to observe. I just want to see what it's like to be at the next level. I want to watch Adrian. I want to watch Mark. I want to watch you, the staff, the players. What's it like? So he invited me down. I went down. I was there for I think about 7 to 10 days. I don't remember exactly. And yeah, that was kind of our relationship. Ever since then, we kept in touch. We'd always connect. We'd just catch up. When I had challenging situations in my job and in life, I'd call John. I'd get advice, and that was just how we stayed connected through time. And then he wanted to step into being a head coach, and he got the opportunity at OKC. So we had a conversation about me going there with him, and it worked out. So John hired me in January to go with him to OKC, and of course COVID came in, so it was a difficult year, but you know, I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity. Again, you have a great relationship already with John, so that's an added bonus. And what sort of role does an assistant coach play? Because typically in the news, right, you always hear, oh, the head coach, the manager, you always hear them, but you never really hear about the assistant coach. So talk me through some of the, again, the benefits of what an assistant coach provides, to the team overall.
Well, it's very different depending on where you go. In the MLS, you kind of have coaches who I wouldn't say they have one job, but the more specialized in their role, in terms of an assistant coach in the MLS may just be the guy who does all the on-field stuff, for example, and that's his job. Another assistant coach, maybe he does the on-field stuff, but he works with the strikers, or he's in charge of recruiting, whatever that may be. In the USL, it's a little bit different. It really depends on the club. Just because budgets are not really extensive in the USL, and there's so much variety in budgets in the USL, assistant coach's role can vary a lot. For example, like last year in Fresno, my main roles was assistant coach. I was a second assistant actually, behind Robert Earnshaw, who was the first assistant, and strength and conditioning. But here at OKC, there is no job that I don't do. I'm an assistant coach. I'm head of fitness. I'm head of recruitment. I periodization, analyzing ourselves, analyzing the opposition. There's not really a job I don't do. So from that sense, it really just does depend on what the needs of the club are, what the needs of the head coach are, and just budget within that organization. It really just depends. But I wouldn't want it any other way here, to be honest. And here's why: is I'm so big on education that I like the fact I have to do everything, because it makes me better at everything. I have to constantly be better and educate myself on all components of my job. And I'll give you an example. From a scouting and a recruitment standpoint, and even analyzing ourselves or an opposition, I really like the fact that now data is becoming a big part of scouting and essentially just analysis. And I wasn't very educated on that at all. So scouting for me was always watching the opposition with your eyes. What do you see? Now, of course, there's always room for error with that. It can be really subjective. So I was always looking for ways to make that a little stronger. And that's where data comes in. And I was weak in that department because initially I couldn't tell you what XG meant. I had no idea how to connect, certain statistics from a game or a player to what I'd seen. How did it make sense? How did it connect? So that was an area I was really weak in. So because of my role in that department, I had to become better at that. And by no means am I good at it today, but I'm better than where I was, 9 months ago when I started to have to do this stuff. So, the role is vast, but I wouldn't want it any other way because it really forces you to just be better.
Completely agree with you. And that's a great sort of transition to the next topic, which is sort of the recruitment process. You talked and mentioned, data and analysis. So being more analytic driven than, the eye test. Do you think that's good for the game? It kind of seemed like you hinted that you like that way, right? You like that approach of looking at the data and, based off that data and analysis, you go from there. Do you think that's good for the game, or do you think there could be certain negativity that comes from that? Because, for example, I know as that the game is now getting more fast-paced, more physicality involved across, all leagues. And so, for example, with using those programs and that analysis, would a player like Messi ever come to age, and in today's game with, using those tools to scout players?
I think there's a balance. I don't think you should be too far one way or the other. I don't think you should be too far to the side of I'm only ever going to watch games or players with my eyes, and I'm only going to look at players' data or a team's data. I just don't think it's you've got the coach's eye. If you've played the game or you've been around the game or you've watched the game, you see things. You see things in players and in teams that you don't always get from data. But it's always just nice to, I suppose, confirm what you see by using data. And that's the way I use it is, if I scout an opposition or if I look at a player, I will always watch the player or the team first. I will never, ever look at the data first. And then I kind of compare what I saw with the data and say, okay, was I right? Was I wrong? Did I miss something? And that's kind of how I use it. I don't think it should be too far one way or the other. But again, the data piece is still something I'm learning a ton about, and how to connect that to the player you're scouting or to the team that you're analyzing. No,
for sure. Again, being in the U.S., there's a lot of sports now, again, baseball, basketball, NFL, that are very analytical driven, with a lot of data, always looking at replays and examining players that way. So I'm definitely self-aware that that sort of analysis is taking place in soccer now too. Whether it's good or not, that's up for debate, right? Probably people that have been scouts for a very long time probably disagree with that aspect of it, but that's the future, right? There's no holding it back. Right.
It's really up for opinion and really if you like it or not. I mean, I like it because you can really zoom in on a profile of a player. If you want a specific type of, for example, a defensive midfielder, and you want him to be a really forward-thinking defensive midfielder, you want him to break lines more than he does play sideways or backwards. Data can help you with that. You can watch the player and see if he does this stuff. But, if, for instance, you can find statistics today that show you how much a player plays forward, how much he plays lateral, and how much he plays backwards. And you can compare 10 different players in those three categories. And you can say, okay, these three players play forward more than they do sideways. So therefore, that's probably more of the profile we're looking for. So data can be helpful in that, because when it comes to scouting, you can be so inundated with amounts of players that you get sent from agents and just the availability of players. It helps you really zoom in and identify a profile that you're looking for. So from that sense, from a scouting sense, it could be really helpful in that area. Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And so what's next for OKC? What's coming up this next season? You're in the off season right now. What can we expect from you guys, going forward? Next year, we don't know what's coming next year, obviously, because the world itself is still really unknown on what's going to happen with COVID. So we don't fully know what to expect yet. Is it going to be a full season? Is it going to be a similar season to last? Is the virus going to come back and have a big impact on the world again? We don't know. So we're just really focused on building a squad, trying to ingrain the playing style that we're trying to put into place. We're trying to really ingrain the culture that we're looking for, and just try and be good people, make ourselves better, make the players better, make the squad stronger, and represent the organization as best as we can in the city. That's all we can focus on. I think if we do all of those things right, I think the results themselves will come. So yeah, it's really just all hands on deck right now and just trying to improve all of those areas.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you guys. And just a little off topic type of thing too. You saw the Raul Jimenez head injury this weekend, right?
I saw some short clips of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a fractured skull. And so what do you think about that? Because I saw it from, ESPN. I've seen all that. I've seen clips where, some analysts are saying, oh, there should be a substitution where, a player appears to have a head injury or concussion. There should be a sort of protocol like there is in the NFL, for example, where they're big and heavy on that because of all the, data that's come out from that with CTE and all that. So do you think that can potentially work in soccer where you have like a sort of short substitute while that player is going through that protocol and then able to come back? Or you think it's too much of a workaround to, get through rather?
I think there's two parts to this. The first part, I think it's funny you mention it because a couple of years ago when I coached in the DA, that was one of the rules is if there was a head injury, you could do a free, you had a free sub.
Wow.
So if a kid was suspected of having a head injury, they would come off, they would get assessed by the medical professional. If they deemed them okay, they could sub back on for the guy you brought on for them. Of course, if they were deemed, if they were not cleared by the medical professional, then you'd already made the sub and you were good. So that was something we had in the DA, and I liked it, especially for the youth level. I think it was extremely smart, just because, concussions, head injuries, still to this day, even though there was been a lot of awareness about them over the past couple of years, I still feel like there's this kind of masculine, stigma to it that, you're fine, just get on with it, type of situation. So I don't agree with it at all. I don't care if it's a youth player or if it's a professional player. The brain is the most important thing in the body and it needs protecting. So if it takes, a sub for somebody to get their brain checked out to make sure it's okay, whether it's in the Premier League or in the DA or whatever it is, I like the idea. The second part to that is kind of a debate that's been going on recently about, just the condensed schedule because of COVID.
Yeah.
And, the substitutions, it was 5 subs last year. Now it's 3. So I know there's a lot of debate going on about that. So maybe that's something that could help. If you had 5 subs this season, not just because of the condensed schedule, but also for situations like this, can that extra couple subs help you in that scenario? So I don't know if it's one way or the other. I don't know which I would favor, but I do think there's a place for injuries like that, to where I think you should be able to have a substitution in some way, shape, or form.
Do you think it could kind of be used towards an advantage for a certain team? Like maybe you can argue someone really doesn't have a head injury or something. Maybe the doctor does something. I don't know. Like, for example, let's say Ronaldo, there's a head-to-head collision, but he's fine, but the doctor rules he's not, so he's out for the game. Do you think that can be a big concern if it starts happening to like more star players? I'm sure that can be one of the, sort of kind of arguments to like not having that in place.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Could somebody use that as a competitive advantage? So where, their doctor, when they assess somebody on the field, says no, he needs to come off, so you get like a free sub. So I could see what you're saying. I think the only way to combat that, it depends on the level that you're at, but the way to combat that is either have like a neutral doctor, or have the opposition team's doctor come on and watch the assessment. I don't know. It's a tough conversation. I don't know what the answer is, but I think there's got to be some sort of neutral ground there, to where there's somebody, a mediator in the middle, who watches over that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's certainly feasible too. I mean, the money's there right across all top leagues, especially. I don't see why it would be an issue to like even try to investigate sort of the process it can take to ensure that the players are being treated right. Because again, head injuries, like you said, your brain, you only have one brain, right? You don't get another one. So it's definitely a delicate topic. I do have one more question to you that's off topic that I've been asking other people in the podcast too. What's sort of the most embarrassing song you have on your playlist?
Most embarrassing song? Ooh. I think it's probably Glee Christmas songs.
Okay. All right. I dig that. That's not too bad.
Yeah, it's I won't point fingers, but it wasn't me.
So I can only assume who it was then.
Yeah, that's probably the one. That's probably the one. And it's not actually one song, it's an album, so that makes it worse.
I hear you, Leigh. Well, man, thank you for coming on. And do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
No, it's been great to talk. It's always nice to kind of reflect on the past and share some, I guess, advice. If it helps somebody, then great. But yeah, it's always fun. So thank you for having me on.
No, thank you so much. If we don't talk, from now to the new year, I hope you have a great new year. And then,
Not like that. Can't wait to see the weekend.